Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Did everybody survive the midterm? I hope so. Like I said, at least you guys don't have to do a speech, right? You just have to know the mechanics and know it very well. So that if they have a public speaking class too, then you'll actually have to perform the speeches, but you'll know exactly what to write, and that's the basis of what you need. If you don't have your writing down, it's going to be a very weak speech. So yeah, so the two weeks ago was the Halloween, and then we had the midterm. Again, I hope everything went well for you. Um, so this class is scheduled, as I look at my trusty calendar, is going to be for Monday, the 16th of November. It means that we'll be having more than half of the month over already. And week and a half after that will be Thanksgiving. And then less than a week will be December. So we're really cooking along here pretty fast. So those are good things. Okay. All right. So let me get to the material. And let me minimize myself. Go to the beginning of the slideshow. So again, school code ENG 105, class title, public speaking. Okay. Week 6, if you need to know that. Otherwise, like I said, this is scheduled for November 16th. Okay. All right. So this is a very important part of your lesson plan for this quarter is what you need to do before you begin to write the speech. Right? These are some important skills you'll need to do before you sit down and actually attempt to write it. Okay. So pay attention to these minute but important facts. The worst executed, or worst meaning the worst done, or even planned, part of many presentations is often the preparation stage. Yes, most people think they don't have to prepare. They can just kind of, slang term means wing it, which means just spontaneously do it. And my experience with that is there's usually young guys, and the young guy might think, I don't have to study or prepare. I'm going to do it on DJing, and because he's a DJ. And then he gets up there, and the first few minutes is pretty good, and then after that he starts forgetting because he didn't put things in order, and then he just kind of throws various parts of the speech in that don't fit, and then he eventually gives up early. So preparation stage is important. And there are 2 reasons for this. The first is that it takes a lot of time to properly prepare a presentation. Time which most people wrongly feel they don't really need to spend or have to spare, the time to spare. The second is that most people, even some experienced public speakers, yes, they can get into bad habits too, don't really know how to properly prepare a talk. But as pointed out in this book's introduction, taking the time to properly prepare a presentation might make you or your company more money in 1 hour than will a year of routine office work. So what they're trying to say there is that if you work for a company, it's probably a sales company, and you have to periodically go and give a speech and hope that people will buy your products or invest in your company. The speeches are very important. And by your short speech, the amount that these people invest or purchase from your company is way more than an hourly wage. So it's important. Okay, to continue, but as pointed out in this book's introduction, taking the time to properly prepare a presentation might make you or your I'm sorry. So again, repeating, more money in 1 hour than will a year of, look at that, a whole year, your salary, office work. Or make the difference between carrying out the day, which means succeeding, or not at your neighborhood watch meeting. So that's more along the lines of, let's say you live in a neighborhood that's, a little dangerous. You want to make sure that certain things are addressed to ensure the safety. If you don't prepare, you present a lousy speech, they won't pay attention to you. So the dangers will continue. Proper preparation starts before you actually begin to write your speech. Okay? The first level you have to decide is what type of talk. Most people understand that they have to decide what they're going to say. But few people spend enough time planning how they're going to say it. Like I said, pay attention to these minute but important steps. You must fully understand the purpose of your presentation. You may simply be informing your audience of something. For instance, if you're explaining how your company's new purchasing procedure works. Some situations call for persuasion, such as convincing your employees that the new purchasing procedure is going to be a good thing for them and the company as a whole. And you need to persuade or change their mind, have them think like you do. You may be trying to motivate your audience to do something, such as making a presentation to management about why they should introduce a new purchasing procedure. Perhaps you'll be motivating your audience not to do something, possibly speaking to management about delaying introduction of the new purchasing rules until all the bugs are worked out. All the bugs are worked out means everything is running smoothly. Everything is fixed that has to be fixed. So that's what they mean. They're not really talking about insects here. We're talking about the smoothness of the business, right? So we're in the middle. The same considerations apply outside of a business context. Suppose you're the treasurer of your local club, which means you're in charge of all the money. It's a big responsibility. You might simply be informing the executive committee of the state of the club's finances, right? As long as you haven't stolen anything. You're honest. You say, this is how much we have, but we need more. But maybe the finances aren't great, see? In which case you'd have to persuade the committee that a fee increase is necessary. Then you might have to motivate all the members to vote in favor of increasing the fees, which is very hard. Nobody wants to spend increased fees when you address them at the annual general meeting. Decide exactly the type of talk you're going to be giving before you begin to write. To determine the appropriate type of speech, you need to know the organizer's objectives are, what they are. You need to find out as much about your audience as you can, particularly what their expectations are, as outlined in chapter 3. What, where, when, and to whom. So again, if it's just a class, then you don't have to worry about your audience. They're your classmates, and they should be supporting you. So you don't have to learn about your audience. You learn from just being in class week to week. But if you work for a company and they tell you, well, you're going to be speaking to Samsung next, then it's wise for you to find out all you can about Samsung, all the products they use and what they need, and you match them with what your company is offering. So you have to do this before you make the speech. And that way it gives your speech a stronger possibility of succeeding, right? Okay. Don't forget your what, where, when, and to whom. Okay, so these are the 4 basic types of talks. That's all you have to know. Sounds like a good question for the final, doesn't it? What are the 4 basic types of talks? Right? So pay attention, please. 1, a talk to inform. So basically, this talk, you're just telling people information. That's it. Telling them about McDonald's, you know, how good the food is, how long it's been around, how many McDonald's restaurants around the world, right? So it's just to inform. That's it. And that's usually the easiest one to do, right? I mean, it can be about you, you know, you just tell people about yourself, right? If you're a pretty girl in my class, then maybe you can inform people on how all the handsome K-pop stars you have dated and broken their hearts, like a Sohee, right? So 2, a talk to persuade. Not so easy, because with persuading, you really have to convince, right? So this is similar to a man who, let's say, we'll make it in easy terms everyone can understand. He really wants to marry this girl. And the girl's listening to him because she has another boyfriend that he doesn't know about. And that guy wants to marry her. So whoever can persuade her the best, that's who she will probably marry, right? If you just go up there and say, well, I think I love you. I'm not sure. I might have a job. I don't know if my car's working. I haven't checked my bank account in a long time. That's really pretty bad on trying to convince the girl, right? And then the other guy just says, hey, I got this beautiful BMW and just got a raise at the job. And I'm going to be moving into Soler, you know, in K-Town. Well, I think you can guess who the girl's going to go with, right? Okay. That's why Kim Kardashian, before she got married, she never dated guys that worked at Sears or McDonald's or Walmart. Not happening. Okay, 3, a talk to motivate. Maybe a little bit tougher than persuade, because you really have to try to motivate. You really have to believe. This kind of speech, what I've seen with my students in the past, they usually fall into the medical, right? Like they'll say, you have to quit smoking, right? Or you have to quit your carbohydrate and sugar intake because, what is it? 1 out of 3 people in the US get diabetes, right? So you're going to have to give them a lot of important facts to motivate them to stop. And it's not easy. I've had some ladies too use this as a diet speech. Yeah, you know, whatever it is, the peanut butter diet, and then you can eat this and then lose weight. And then usually the girls start listening, right? Especially if the person has a success story of their own, losing 20 pounds in a month from eating only peanut butter, right? Or maybe if you just eat kimchi, you could probably lose 20 pounds in a month. And then 4 is very interesting. It's a talk to entertain. Now, how will I explain this to you? I would recommend this to you only if you really have a talent in the entertaining that you're going to present. If you don't, then you're going to look very silly. It would be like the same situation would be the man says, hey, I can sing at a talent show. So I'm going to sing a song, and then he sings and he can't sing at all. That's embarrassing, right? So I'll give you a example of this, my history with students. One time I had this Japanese lady. She was very, very shy and was not doing well in class, and was not telling me what her speech was going to be on. She is changing stuff in the quarter, and I said, that's fine. You can change it up until the last day, but it's up to you to feel confident. But she had a strategy. So she came up, and everybody knew she was shy and kind of felt bad for her, but her speech was to entertain. And we discovered that she was a professional magician. So she felt comfortable talking and performing magic. And she did quite a good job. Like I said, you better have the talent to pull it off. Don't say you're going to sing a song and you sound like a dog, yelling at the police siren going by. Oh! So she was fantastic. And that's didn't feel comfortable talking like most people, but doing her magic and talking, she was great. So you can do an entertaining speech, whatever it is, some type of performance. Uh, you can do it, and it's easy, but you got to have the talent. Okay, so all right. So let's see what the material has to say. Back me up here in my experience. Although most of the basics discovered in this book apply to all 4 types of talks, there are nuances and subtleties attached to each that need to be considered. Okay, here's 2 tough words here: nuances and subtleties. Wow, am I going to explain these to you? Okay. The nuances is plural. So a nuance is a slight, it's not a technique, but it's a slight way that, let's say, people do something, right? So this will be easy. I'll make it like this, right? Let's say I give a speech, and I'm doing it with American nuances, right? And then a Japanese person gives the speech, and they're going to give it with Japanese nuances. So think of it as like a flavor, right? So I'm going to give it a little McDonald's flavor, let's say, and the Japanese person's going to give it a little miso flavor. Same speech about the same stuff, but everybody has a different nuance. Now, subtlety, okay, I'll go back to the Japanese on this. Subtle is a very soft kind of feeling, or I'll try to relate it to things we can really understand. For example, Korean people tend to like spicy food. So when they bite into something, they want to immediate, like a spicy tenjan or jjigae taste, like, ooh, joa, that's pretty good stuff. The Japanese have a different flavor. They're not much into spicy food at all. And they'll even wait. They'll taste something and then wait for that light, which means subtle taste that comes at the end. A dish that in my experience when I was in Japan was umeboshi, right? So, to me, it just looks like, rice with hot water, and then it has this ume on the bottom, which is like a little yellow plum. So, I tasted it, and it's like, okay, hot water, rice, and then I waited a few seconds, and I could finally taste that little subtle light taste of the plum. Okay, so those are nuances and subtleties. Okay. For some presentations, you will combine two or perhaps all of the first three types of talks listed above. That is too difficult to do when you are a beginner, and I would not attempt to do that. Stick, like I said, if they have a public speaking too and you get a chance to perform, just do one on informing. Just do one on persuading or motivate. You got to be really good to mix. Continuing, but a talk to entertain is simply that, a talk to entertain the audience. Nothing more, nothing less. But again, you got to have the talents, right? Okay. Never attempt to give a talk to entertain unless the occasion clearly calls for it and you're confident. She had the confidence in that situation, my student, that you have enough interesting or original material to pull it off. She had a lot of magic tricks. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to make the other types of talks entertaining, right? You don't want to have boring talks. But giving an entertaining talk, which you should always strive for or try to accomplish, that's what that means, is totally different than giving a talk designed specifically and solely to entertain. You can make your talks entertaining by following the advice given in this book. Talks to entertain are appropriate at occasions such as retirement parties and wedding receptions. So what they're saying there is if you're giving a speech, again, you're trying to have Samsung invest in your company, it's probably not good to try to entertain too much. You should stay to the facts. That's what's going to interest Samsung. The best approach for a talk to entertain is to tell stories that involve you and other people in the audience, particularly the guest of honor. So, like your best friend is the guy getting married. A talk to entertain should be filled with details. Tell the audience what happened, who was involved, when it happened, where it all took place, why it happened, and how it all turned out. Name names and describe in detail the people, places, and things involved. People love to hear things like that at a wedding. Maybe how the couple originally met, and there was a blind date, and maybe you were supposed to date the bride first instead of your buddy. So you have to give the detail. If there's a punchline, which is the funny part, moral, lesson, or interesting twist, keep the mystique or mystery alive and don't reveal it until the very end. A talk to inform is designed to do just that. Like I said, it's the easiest one to begin with. The audience should leave the room knowing more about the subject than they did when they arrived. And that's a good goal. You're going to fill them with so much information about the topic that they're going to say, wow, I know much more after this person's talk. All talks, except talks to entertain, are at their core or center talks to inform, but done in different ways. A talk to persuade involves both imparting, which means sharing information to the audience, and persuading them to your point of view. You have to convince the audience that what you're propounding or stating is right, correct. and that they should agree with you. To convert a talk to inform to a talk to persuade, you have to introduce unequivocal, which means you cannot go against this information. Easily understandable. Relevant, which means timely, what's going on now. If you talk to me about issues from 1940, it's not relevant. And compelling evidence to back up your points. Compelling is evidence that you have to accept. It's very, very compelling. Okay? All right. So, continuing in the middle, a talk to motivate your audience to do or not to do something requires at least 2 and possibly 3 more ingredients. The first additional ingredient is that you have to clearly tell the audience what you want them to do or not do. So don't do this, or please do that. The second additional ingredient is that you have to tell them in no uncertain terms, for sure, what will happen to them if they do or don't do what you're suggesting. The third additional ingredient is to make it as easy as possible for the audience to do what you want them to do, if it's within your power to help them. Right? If it's within your power. At the bottom, suppose, for example, that you want an audience of 100 fellow citizens to write to your own town council to convince it that a new set of traffic lights is needed in your neighborhood. You know, it's probably too many accidents there. People have died, so there's no lights. You need to put traffic lights there. You got to convince them, though. You should have 20 clipboards, each with a copy of a letter outlining the request at the back of the room. Have 5 ballpoint pens beside each clipboard. Tell the audience that all they have to do is sign one of the letters, and you'll look after collecting and mailing them. Explain that because there are 20 copies available, there should be no long lines on the way out. Oh yes, also tell them that after they sign the letter, they can keep the pen and make it a good pen, not a cheap pen or it has a ketchup stain on it. People love to get something, even of modest value, for nothing, right? The difference between persuading and motivating is that a talk to persuade may convince your audience that they probably should or shouldn't do something. But a talk to motivate will inspire them to actually do or not do it. Okay, right. So stop smoking, you know, get your sugars, stop drinking alcohol, fight the diabetes. In the simplest terms possible, talks to inform, persuade, and motivate can be illustrated or shown as follows. A talk to impart information. Okay, so here's the example. There is a flight to Chicago at 5:30 this evening with space available. A talk to persuade. There is a flight to Chicago at 5:30 this evening and you should book it because it's the only remaining flight that has space available. So the first one was just strictly information. This one, you're trying to tell them, hey, it's the only flight that has space available. You should get this one. And then a talk to motivate. The only flight to Chicago this evening with space available. leaves at 5:30, and you should be on it. Otherwise, you'll have to stay here overnight, at your own expense. Nobody wants to pay for a hotel, right? They don't have to. You need to leave for the airport right now. There's a bus waiting for you at the front entrance. I've already booked your tickets. And Tony Meredith, stand up and identify yourself. Tony will distribute them to you on the way to the airport. So that's pretty motivating, right? There's both good motivation there and, and the negative. The negative is you don't want to stay overnight, pay for another hotel. The good is that they have a bus waiting for you already. Your tickets are booked. You just have to meet Tony Meredith and identify yourself. You will be distributing the tickets. How nice. Okay. There are a few rules of thumb that will ensure that your presentation is the right length. That's not easy. So listen up. The most important guideline is to keep your talk as short as possible. Say only what is absolutely necessary in order to meet the objective of the presentation and the expectation of the audience. Provided these are met, there is no such thing as a speech that's too short, unless your speech is, "Hi, my name is Yo-Yo, goodbye," and that would be too short. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address contained only 268 words. I was in the audience at a junior achievement convention in Washington, D.C. a number of years ago when the legendary actor John Wayne gave a memorable and convincing luncheon speech that lasted less than 2 minutes. The impact of the Gettysburg Address is still being felt today. And I doubt that any of the 2,000 people who heard John Wayne that day have forgotten his message. After dinner presentations should never be more than 20 minutes long. After a cocktail, a nice dinner, some fine wine, your audience's attention span will simply not tolerate anything longer. They're full. Hopefully they're not drunk. They want to go home, so their attention span's not going to last for a long time. Even if your talk might provoke some questions, don't have a question and answer period at the end of an after-dinner speech. The twin dangers of running overtime and having to cut off some people far outweigh any advantage of having a question and answer period. Instead, offer to stay around after your talk to discuss any questions that individual members of the audience might have. That's a good technique because even if people have some questions, if you tell them the speech is over and they can go home, a lot of people that have questions will just leave. They'll say, "I can wait," and they'll go home. So you'll have even less people to deal with for a possible question and answer session. So at the bottom, a luncheon speech should ideally be 30 to 45 minutes long, including the question and answer period, should you decide to have one. Having a question and answer period after a luncheon presentation is perfectly in order, provided you don't go beyond the scheduled adjournment time. Adjournment is the time that the company gives you for the speech. You can't go over it. They set the time, not you. Finally, always plan to finish earlier than the audience expects. The show business adage or saying of leaving them wanting more is just as relevant, which is timely, what's going on now, in public speaking as it is on the stage. So again, what they're saying there is get them excited, have them like what you have to say, but it's better to cut it early so that they actually want more than going longer. And now they're a little bored. They're like, okay, enough, right? It's a strategic technique. Time flies at the lectern. Again, my students forget or don't know. That's the rectangular piece of wood that people stand behind when they give speeches. So you'll probably speak longer than you intended to. Prepare material for about 80% of your allotted, which means given, time. This will give you time to deal with any unforeseen delays, like my students yelling or starting to dance, as well as allow you to finish early and leaving them wanting more. You'll probably even get asked back. That's fantastic if your job does depend on you giving good speeches. We go into the next part of information here. It's the audience that matters. Before writing your speech, ask yourself what need your audience is hoping to fulfill by coming to hear you. And then logically appeal to that need. Again, that's a sales technique. If company you're going to speak to is a candy company, find out what their best-selling candy is, whatever it is, chocolate, and then don't talk about caramels, don't talk about butterscotch. Talk to them about chocolates. It's a good strategy to get success. You must give the audience something to take away with them. That's like we talked away the pen earlier. You can also give information. To determine the appropriate type of talk and the approach you're going to take, you need to ask yourself the following questions. 1, why have I been asked to address this particular audience? The boss told me to, right? 2, what do they expect from me? You should probably change that to thinking, what can I give them that will make them happy? 3, what can they learn from my experience and knowledge? That's a good point. 4, what, if anything, do I have in common with them? A lot of people don't look into that, but if you have something in common, people are going to like it. Again, you can go back to a dating technique. Your friend's going to set you up on a blind date with this pretty girl, and you ask him, what do you know she likes? She says something like, she likes roses. So that's when the guy usually starts lying and says, I used to work in a flower shop and I sold a lot of roses, right? Because he wants to have something in common with her. 5, does the audience have any problems for which I have the solution? Yeah. If you look up, again, what are the problems that Samsung has been having? And you can offer some solutions, man, are they going to listen to you? 6, is there anything in particular that I think they should or should not do? That's a tricky one. I'd be careful with that one. You don't want them to think that you're smarter than them. You're telling them what to do and they haven't been doing something correctly. Be very careful with 6. 7, how much do they know about the subject? So you have to play with that too. If they don't know too much, then you can really sound like an expert. Okay, the top of the next page. Don't be too quick to dismiss ideas that come into your mind while considering these questions, right? So anything that you think about, don't throw it away. Think about them all. You never know. What's old hat to you may be an interesting revelation to your audience. So Old hat is something you know very well and have done it, spoken about it many times. But just because it's old to you, it might be a new revelation to your audience. So get a feeling for that. If that's the case, you should talk about it. Anything you remember about your topic may in some way be meaningful. So jot it all down. Jot it means to write it. It's a lot easier at the editing stage to cut out material than it is to add meaningful information. Yeah, so what they're saying is if you do more information than what you need, it's easy to cut it out. It's very hard to add something important at the end because planning it, you don't know what it is. Okay? You are going to be judged on what you say and how you say it. Although you want people to remember your name and face, your ultimate responsibility is to see that your message finds its way into the minds of your audience. Yes. So it's the message you want them to remember, not your pretty or handsome face. Jump right? I won't tell your girlfriend though I said that. The best way to get people to remember you is by ensuring or making sure that your message makes a strong impact on them. For your message to be memorable, you have to prepare and present your remarks from your audience's point of view. I mean, that's the goal. That's what you want. It might be difficult to do that 100% of the time, but that's what you're trying to reach as a goal. No matter how strongly you feel about a subject, and no matter how much you want to talk about it, you have to make it mean something to the people sitting there listening to you. So on this end, yeah, it can't just be about you and what you understand. You have to make it at least, well, I don't know, 40%, something to let them understand what you're talking about. Some people do get carried away like that. They just give a speech about their knowledge and they don't realize, oops, I don't think the audience is understanding me or relating to me. That's a mistake. That's why it says over here, it's the audience that matters, right? Okay. Your audience will have formed some sort of expectation about what they're going to hear. Everybody does this. You need to find out before you prepare your talk what that expectation is, because they might be in the mood for one type of message, but not another. It's a tricky line to walk also. For example, when introducing that new purchasing procedure to the staff, it's the best to highlight how their jobs are going to be made easier rather than focusing on the training and overtime necessary to get everything running smoothly. So you see, that's how you attack that issue. This extra work, you don't tell them, oh, we're going to have to do extra training, we're going to have to do overtime. Even getting paid, some people just hate to do overtime. Instead, you say, what we're going to do, and you downplay that and say, just see how easy this is going to make the job once we finish this. That the people will concentrate on the positive. Is that Titan out there speeding that car? Hope she stopped stealing. Her and Caroline, they've stolen a lot of cars in the last few months. If there's any chance that the audience might be antagonistic, which means against your view, and they might be mildly antagonistic about something as simple as mandatory attendance at your talk. So that means sometimes when you go speak to a company, they make it mandatory that 20 or 30 people go. And let's say a lot of the people don't like going. They'd rather not do it, but they're forced to do it. So they might be in a bad mood already. It's not your fault. Okay. The more important it is for you to find common ground with them. So you have to find, again, something that you and they share. Find objectives that you share with the audience and then develop points on which they can agree. People love to agree, right? Agree with you. Assume again that you're the treasurer of your club and you're faced with having to inform your fellow club members of a proposed increase in annual dues. Nobody wants to hear this. It would be a good idea to emphasize the pride that you will all have in the club. Remind your fellow members how everyone enjoys using attractive and up-to-date facilities, and stress the desirability of maintaining the club's stellar reputation, which means a highly esteemed reputation. You should introduce such common ground in the opening of your talk. Yeah. What they're trying to say there is try to do that sooner better than later. You talk for a while. People are waiting for that common ground and they can get bored. So if you do it sooner, you've already established it. And they're going to pay attention and listen to you instead of being bored. So again, you should introduce such common ground in the opening of your talk. Remember, it's always all about the audience. If it's a talk to inform, the audience has to leave knowing more about the topic than when they arrive. That's the goal on those information. That might be a good question for the title. If you're doing a talk to inform, what should the audience leave knowing? And then your answer is going to be more about the topic than when they arrive. Maybe I'll use that. If it's a talk to persuade, you have to be convinced, and you do have to convince them again, like the guy that's trying to convince the girl to marry him. Who's got the bigger ring? If it's a motivational talk, they have to be inspired to act. Yes, that's the goal there. They have to actually be willing to do something. That's a little slight difference between persuade and motivation. If it's a talk to entertain, they have to be amused. So they have to be entertained. It can't be a bad song. It can't be a terrible dance, or like my student, it's not going to be good if she does terrible magic. It's just not acceptable. Some other considerations. Think about whether you will have time to spend clearing up misconceptions. Misconceptions are things that people think are correct, but they are not. Okay? So misconceptions can be, for example, I've had Japanese students come to the United States for the first time and tell me they're surprised that American people don't eat McDonald's every day. That's what they thought in Japan, right? And the same with American people. They say, oh, we thought Japanese people eat sushi every day. You don't realize how expensive sushi is? Not everybody in Japan is rich, So if the shareholders at an annual general meeting think that their company's performance, is not up to industry standards, when in fact it is, the CEO better get that misconception out of the way emphatically, very strongly, immediately. So again, whatever they think is not good about your company and that's not true, you better make them understand that immediately. Otherwise, they might not listen to you as you try and proceed, right? So what you got to do it right away. Continuing, you can't effectively talk about more than one thing at a time. Okay. So it's usually best to stick to one strong message. That is a very good strategy. And leave it at that. No matter how powerful the temptation may be to throw in a couple of ancillary thoughts, which means extra different thoughts. And a lot of people that do speeches will do that. They think, wow, I'll just add a bunch of other stuff, you know. Again, making it simple for you. If your speech is about how hamburgers are the best thing to eat in the world, don't start talking about your other experiences eating hot dogs and donuts, because it takes away from your strong message of the hamburger. It makes it sound like you really don't believe that hamburgers are the best, because now you're talking about hot dogs and donuts. However, you can talk about a number of different points. Let's say, so that would be different points about the hamburger, as long as each one is linked or connected directly to the one strong message. So that would be something like, well, I'm talking about the basic all-American, cheeseburger. Now, if you want to add that there's also good Tommy's chili burgers and Hawaiian style burgers with teriyaki and a pineapple slice, that's fine, because they're still burgers and they're connected to your main message. They're not completely different, again, like hot dogs and donuts. If you can't express the overall theme of your presentation on the back of a business card, and you know how small they are, it's probably too complex, your theme. It needs to be reworked and streamlined, which means cut down. And it's just too much. Coming up to the top, also keep in mind that although the topic, the theme, and your main points may stay the same for different audiences, one approach may not suit all audience. This is true, that if you have to say it to a few different companies. Your script and delivery should vary depending on the formality and the mood of the event. Formality means one might be a high-class speech. People are wearing tuxedos. And another one might be just regular. If you're promoting changes to make income tax laws easier to understand, you would use different examples when addressing an audience of corporate chief financial officers. These people know taxes like you don't believe. Then you would be speaking to a meeting of the American Association of Retired Persons. So that's just regular folks that are retired. They don't have the tax knowledge. So you're going to have to say it in a different way to increase the understandability of your speech. Winston Churchill, who often peppered his speeches in the British House of Commons with humor, which means he peppered it. He sprayed a lot of humor in his speeches. Maintained a perfectly serious tone when delivering his famous Iron Curtain speech. Franklin Delano Roosevelt often used a folksy, which means like country style, down-to-earth tone in his talks. But his nothing to fear but fear itself address was forceful and compelling. Finally, before you begin to write your speech, there are two things you need to decide before all others: how you're going to start and how you're going to finish. You might be able to survive a presentation with a soft middle, but you absolutely need a strong opening and a strong closing. Again, closing is a summary of your points, so try to make it as strong as your opening, because people can forget your middle, but they'll remember your opening and your closing. If your closing is weak, you may undo all the positive results you achieved during the earlier part of your speech, and it makes you look lazy. Extra time spent on deciding your opening and closing remarks will also make writing the middle part of your presentation a lot easier. Ooh, it looks like some final exam questions there. If you've given sufficient thought to all the points in this chapter, you're now ready to write your speech or begin writing your speech. Again, you have to give sufficient thought. So let's head to the nutshell. One, there are 4 types of talks: to inform, to persuade, to motivate, and to entertain. Decide which type of talk or combinations of types you're going to give. Don't try to do combos at this beginning point in your career. 3, the best way to give a talk to entertain is to tell detailed stories involving you and other people in the room, especially a guest of honor. So again, usually at weddings and baby showers or birthdays. If you're giving a talk to inform, the audience must leave knowing more about the subject than they did when they arrived. And I've mentioned that about 3 or 4 times. To raise the level of a talk to inform to a talk to persuade, you have to introduce unequivocal. So it means, unequivocal means you can't go against it. The information is 100% true. Easy, understandable, and compelling evidence to back up your points. In a talk to motivate, you have to clearly tell the audience what you want them to do or not to do. Tell them what will happen to them otherwise. Make it as easy as possible for them to follow your advice. The organizer's objectives and the audience's expectations must be met. Again, they're in charge of it, your boss. Then to get the success for your company, the audience is kind of in charge. After dinner speeches shouldn't be longer than 20 minutes. People are full and want to go home. And possibly drunk. 9, don't have a question and answer period after an after dinner speech, but it's a good idea to offer to stay around and answer questions after the formal proceedings end. 10, luncheon speeches shouldn't exceed 45 minutes, including the question and answer period. 11, remember, it's always good to leave the audience wanting more. Plan to finish before the time of adjournment, which is when they say finished. 12, at this stage of your preparation, don't dismiss any thoughts that you feel could be included. It's easier to cut out than add in when editing. That's like a movie director's technique, right? They film a lot of extra material. So if they feel they don't need it, they easily cut it out. But if they only shot what they thought they needed, and when they finished making the movie, and they said, oh, we needed more time on this scene, or I wanted to shoot the scene a different way, the actors might have gone home already, right? And you have to call them to come back, and it costs money. So it's better to have more than less. If there's even the slightest chance that the audience might be antagonistic or against you or upset, search hard for common ground and points on which they'll agree with you, and use these points in your opening. Get them out there as soon as you can. It's usually best to stick to one strong message. If you can't express the theme of your talk on the back of a business card, it's probably too complex. Your script and delivery should vary depending on the formality and expectations of the audience. If misconceptions need to be cleared up, do so during your opening. 17, your opening and closing are the most important parts of any speech. Okay, I have a little extra stuff here I think is important. Okay, I'll have to read this to you. And, it's entitled Beginning, Ending, and In Between. Okay, this is going to go along with the theme of trying to have a strong beginning and ending. Here, maybe even making, padding your in between. So these are techniques to help you ensure a higher, well, I don't want to say score, but a higher acceptability on your speech. Make sure you open your speech with a grabber. Now, we're not talking about physically grabbing you, but instead grabbing your attention, maybe even emotionally. A beginning designed to get immediate interest. And make sure your ending is strong. A powerful ending will help you eliminate those awful 2 words so many speakers use. Thank you. They're the speaker's equivalent or same meaning of the Warner Brothers cartoon ending for like Bugs Bunny, right? That's all, folks. It says, I don't know how else to wrap this up, right? I don't know what else to say except thank you. No one knows for sure. But I seriously doubt that Lincoln said that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Thank you. Finish strong, nod. That means you shake your head down and go. Or finish strong, nod, step back, and come forward to the microphone again and solicit questions, if that's what your host has asked you to do. So even in class, when I've taught a speech class where students actually speak, they can ask you questions. Be lucky in this online class, that's not going to happen. But yeah, they can ask you whatever you talk about. They say, really, what do you know? Are you for sure? What's your experience? And this might happen in the business world. Your boss might say, I want these people to ask you questions, Caroline. Check your information. Watch your language. Eliminate obscenity. That means cuss words, like the S word and the F word. Don't use them. Forgo ethnic slurs. That means negative comments about people's ethnicity, whether they're Mexican or Chinese or whatever. Don't do it. And don't do anything that might be offensive to someone in the audience. So you can take a quick scan and see if maybe somebody's handicapped or somebody's old. So don't make any comments about old folks that someone might say that's negative. This person says here, writing this, I learned this lesson the hard way. I had no idea that I was offending people with language I considered perfectly acceptable. But the fact that some people find even hell or damn truly upsetting. So again, before I change the page here, don't forget about the grabber. That's going to be on your test. Make sure you open your speech with what? And then Temujin says, I'm going to shoot a shotgun. That's how I begin my speech. No, you use a grabber. Otherwise, Paul is going to be angry with you. Offensive words tell me that you and I don't need to use those or stronger words, and you really don't. When I was growing up, if people used a lot of cuss words, which unfortunately I see a lot of young people using them now, it's very depressing to me. They would say, well, obviously you have a weak vocabulary because you're always saying the S word, always saying damn, always saying the F word. So you don't have much of a vocabulary, do you? So don't use them in your speeches. Again, anything that calls attention to itself or causes your audience embarrassment is bad technique. So don't try to embarrass anybody in the audience or yourself. Anything that distracts your audience from what you just said while you're still talking is bad technique. If you're not noted for your joke telling skill, don't try it in the formal speaking situation. So yeah, if you're not good at telling jokes, you're kind of dry, like, hey, why didn't the skeleton cross the road? Oh, we don't know why. He didn't have the guts. And people don't think that's funny. Don't tell those jokes. It's deadly it's deadly to your speech. And more often than not, the audience has heard the joke before. Only a great storyteller can make a joke funny on second or third hearing. That's why the really good gag men or comedians, they can say their same joke 2 or 3 times and people still laugh. It takes a talent. I worked with a man who wouldn't start a speech without telling 3 short jokes. I'm certain he once took a speech course, and the only thing he remembered from it was be sure to break the ice with something funny. So if you haven't heard the term, if you hear that boogling sound, that's not my stomach, okay? Break the ice is like when you go to a party, a guy wants to meet a girl, but it feels cold because he's never met her, so he has to break that ice so that she'll talk to him. And so the same thing with giving a speech. You don't know these people, they look at you strangely. So you say, hey, the best thing to break the ice with is with jokes. But as you can see here, it was bad advice for him because he wasn't a very good storyteller. Again, if I have to give you another example, and I've worked with guys like this, what happened here? Uh-oh, let me see here. I got this. Okay. Like I said, I worked with a guy like this before, and he would tell jokes like, hey, you want to hear a dirty joke? So the guys at work say, sure. What's a dirty joke? And he said, a white horse fell in the mud. So at that point, they wanted to kill this guy because he was not funny. So if this is your style, don't tell jokes. I tried in the gentlest way or kindest way I could to make him aware that he was really turning his audience off. And that means turning them against him. Okay. So you're going to have questions. Okay, these questions here are going to be for the first part. What is usually the worst executed part of the speech? We know what that is. 2, what is the main reason for this? Give you a hint, it's preparation. 3, what must you fully understand? That's what Temujin says, nothing. 4, what are this should be 4, not full. So what are the 4 types of speeches from the reading? So I corrected that already for you guys, okay? 5, so what do you need to decide before you write your speech? And then you say, whether I'm gonna take a shower or not, that's not the answer. When are talks to entertain? The best approach. Oh, looks like I might have put some hints in there. I must be getting weak. 7, after a talk to inform, your audience should know what? At the end. 8, a talk to persuade should accomplish what? And it's not to get the audience angry. That's not what you're trying to accomplish. 9, in your speech, you must give the audience what? That's what some funny guys say. Give them some money. No. Hopefully they give you some money. 10, how do you get your audience to remember you? Remember, is it really your face they want them to remember? What is it that you really want them to remember? It's a trick. 11, how can you do this? And again, I get funny guys, Mr. Hong, and they say, "Oh, well, if I wear a man's bikini, they'll remember me." That's not what we're going for here in this class. So there you go. Okay, those are the questions. So let me go back to the top. All right. So after this, then answer your questions, and then I will see you the following week. Okay. So thank you, everybody. Bye bye.